All right, we're back. Welcome back to the final half hour of Cannabis Chat for a Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young. I'm joined by David Rabinovitz every Friday. And a reminder once again that from 4 to 6 p.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I'm in this chair. On Mondays, we talk about cannabinoid medicine with our friend Alyssa Merrill from flowerandtonic.com. Wednesdays, we call it Professor Weed Wednesdays, but I'm getting some pushback on that. I'm hearing that maybe it's Cannabis Universe or Cannabis University Wednesdays. We'll float that out there. And of course, on Friday, it's the business of cannabis, the Green Rush, with David and myself. Now we're joined still by Grant Smith Ellis and also one of the principals at Berkshire Roots, a dispensary with locations in the Berkshires and in East Boston. James Winokur is with us. James, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and so first of all, how are things going in both of your locations in Massachusetts? And I'm obviously especially interested in how it's going in East Boston.
We are really pleased with the environment post reopening back in end of May. And we do really well out in Pittsfield. Our customers are very happy with our product and our service style. And our goal was to bring that to East Boston. So we often say we're bringing the Berkshires to Boston. So when you come in, Jimmy's been here. When you come in, we have a lot of the same feel, warm tones, stone, wood environment. And we've become kind of the neighborhood bar. You know, you remember the old TV show Cheers?
Yeah.
So Pittsfield's, big operation, lots of people come through. East Boston, we see people more frequently like the neighborhood bar.
Hey, do me a favor, because I actually was out in the Berkshires a couple of weeks ago, and
Yes.
I just drove out to Mount Greylock, drove up and back, and took a few pictures, and it was just a nice leaf peeping weekend, if you will.
Great.
Where in Pittsfield are you located?
There's a main area in Pittsfield called Dalton Ave.
Yeah.
Dalton Avenue is where our cultivation and our dispensary is located.
Okay.
And if you were anywhere near there, or people who are from that area know, we're actually building a separate building for more cultivation.
Cool. All right. That's good. One of the things that we did talk about in our brief call before was I did get a couple of calls from some wholesalers who are out there wholesaling cannabis for different organizations, and they're fearful that because of the backlog of testing in the two testing facilities, CDX and MCR, that there may be a drought of flower. Now, you are a vertical. You're not going to have that issue, right?
Well, we actually do both. We wholesale out and we bring goods in because we want to bring that variety, fill some categories maybe that we don't produce products for, different flower types. So we're in the same, ball game as everybody else, finding products and selling products.
There you go. Okay, there you go. And you're not fearful that we're looking at a drought because of the demand during the COVID pandemic and the fact that we may actually be going back indoors again. You're not fearful that you're going to run out, right?
I don't think anyone's going to run out, but we've definitely seen the supply get a little shorter. I think three things have happened. One, we had a medical license. We have a medical license. So we continued to grow and package, and we were able to build our inventory. So when we reopened adult use, like a lot of others in Massachusetts, we had inventory. I think demand has increased since the reopening of adult use. So those supplies have started to come down. So you've got a little bit lower supply from growers, and you've got a higher demand post adult use opening.
James, what's your feeling about the delivery licenses and the controversy that seems to be ongoing in front of the commission? They had a long day today.
It's a really interesting topic. At another company, I was very involved in looking at delivery out in California to bring our brands out there. So I got very well versed in how they do it in California. For Boston, I am actually partnering with a company who's a candidate to do delivery in Boston. Great relationship. I've actually been mentoring them even before I joined Berkshire Roots. They're called Zip Run. So I'm looking forward to delivery service for our customers in the Boston area. But we did see this expansion of how that would work. And I think, there'll eventually be a balance of how that would work. So if you're a retailer like us who's got a store, obviously those of us who have that investment, staff, brick and mortar are concerned about a competitor having a little easier time and less investment. I do think the pie is big enough for everybody, and eventually we'll figure this out so it works for everyone. But I'm working with a company that we fully expect to get a delivery license, and we'll be able to deliver in Boston.
Good. David?
So do you think it's going to have a big impact on your business? Will home delivery take a bite out of your walk-in revenue, or do you think it's just going to expand your ability to serve customers?
I believe the pie keeps growing in cannabis. So I think we'll see people who want to come in. We offer a lot of guidance. One of the things we're known for at Berkshire Roots is our great staff, knowledgeable staff. So people are still learning. They still want to come in and talk to someone. The convenience of home delivery is something we want to offer, and I think expands the pie. The jump with the CCC regulation is allowing those delivery companies to buy wholesale as if they're, if we're Berkshire Roots providing wholesale, they're buying directly from us. That's the same as if we were selling to another retailer. But if you're a standalone retailer, you're not a cultivator, then it's a direct competitor. So there's some compromise that needs to be found there.
Grant, I'm sure you have a question for James, and I love putting you on the spot because I know you can handle it.
No, I wouldn't say it's a question. I think first, if you're wholesaling to another retailer, that's wholesaling to a competitor. So you may as well wholesale to a delivery operator because you can make money and they're coming to the market. And I think that's where we're going. My feeling on it is that if you are a responsible business owner and you're not being predatory with your relationship with a cannabis courier, I think that's healthy. That's where the market should be at. My worry was that in the absence of the delivery operator license, brick and mortar retailers had no incentive to do anything but be predatory, because in 3 years, as long as a dispensary owner has less than 3 adult use brick and mortar locations, they can get their own delivery license.
Right.
So that was the balance I thought needed to be struck, and I thought they did it. I thought the cap was intelligent, and I think they'll keep looking at it. So I guess we're on a similar wavelength. I think they're moving in the right direction, and I'm happy they did so.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Grant. Is a lot of the concern isn't so much about short term, whether it's a 2-year or a 3-year runway for social equity, economic empowerment. It's what happens after 3 years. And do those companies get absorbed by larger out-of-state companies or in-state companies? And now it's a different ballgame.
One of the things you mentioned, James, in a statement earlier was the growth of education that you guys are still finding. People want to come in and learn about this plant.
Yes.
What are some of the outreach? Do you have an outreach program? I'm sure you have some kind of a community outreach, because I think that's part of the licensing, right?
It is. I think we Berkshire Roots do a lot more than even what we committed to. So of course with COVID, it limited us in terms of events or ability to go out. So we've done different things online, but we've gotten involved in 2 programs I think you'll be interested in, Jimmy. One, Berkshire Community College started an accredited educational program, and we partnered with them. We actually brought the idea to them. So they created a classroom, a lab, and a practicum, and the practicum is actually at Berkshire Roots. So we've had a first class of students come through the program, work in our facility, and we ended up hiring 6 of the students that came through that program.
I love hearing that. I just want to say, I love hearing that, how
Right.
education and expansion can lead to job creation, because this is what's bugged me the most about our federal government, is that one side of the aisle is counting the word cannabis and comparing it to jobs, and they can't quite understand that cannabis and jobs should go hand in hand. Let's
Right.
just say. I had to make that statement.
Yeah, no, I was really proud of our team. Our community outreach and training manager, Maya Richards, has been in the Berkshires a long time. Great cannabis knowledge. She brought that to the Berkshire Community College. In addition, we signed up for the Cultivated program, which I'm guessing you've talked about, on your show. So we currently have 2 fellows. These are fellows who were formerly incarcerated for marijuana-related criminal activity. They're working on expungement. We have now one that's gone through our East Boston retail program. At the same time, there was one out in the Berkshires going through our cultivation program, and they've now switched. So one's here in East Boston, where I am right now, and one's out in the Berkshires. Both both I expect to lead to jobs for them as well.
So talk a little bit more about what you're doing with the school. When the students come in, do you have to walk us through some of the mechanics? Do they have to have a marijuana establishment agent card before they can go behind the curtain?
Yes, absolutely. So they go through a classroom activity. They do training with us in classroom style. At the same time, we're getting through the CCC, the badges that will be required. And after a certain period of time through their curriculum, they then join us in the facility in retail, cultivation, our manufacturing, which includes extraction, kitchen. So they get to see it all. They get a feel for it. They see what they gravitate towards. In our case, it was obviously the first time this has ever been done. We had some of our managers, little tug of war of who wanted who in which department. So it was kind of fun because we ended up with an exceptional group of people.
And how many do you typically take through at a time?
There were 12 people in the curriculum, and we ended up with 6 that wanted to join us.
And how often are they running the courses at the school?
It's, I believe, going to be run every, I don't know what their system, it was trimesters or semesters, but I believe it's twice a year.
So when you bring these folks in as employees, how long are they staying with you? Just until their course is over or until the next course starts? Or?
Yeah, it's a 6-week program as part of the curriculum.
Got it.
And then in that time they spend inside our facility, we get a real good feel for what they like to do, what they're good at. And in this case, it resulted in those hires.
That's interesting. So obviously you're probably familiar with the social equity training program.
Yes.
And I'm with one of the training firms. So we have the folks who are trying to get into the entrepreneurial track, but there's also the people who just want to get into the industry. Right. Are you doing anything with the social equity program this way?
We didn't formally. I just mentioned that I happened to have this relationship when I came across someone who wanted to get in the delivery business. So Zip Run CEO and I started forming a friendship relationship. So kind of on my own, not through that program, started helping him understand the business, the CCC, regulatory environment in Boston, because we just went through that here. So we've developed a really good relationship parallel to what you're discussing.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, if you've got any interest in the in expanding what you're doing with the school to the social equity program, we'd be thrilled to have that discussion with you.
Yeah, let's definitely connect on that.
Yep.
I actually know where both of you live, so I'll be happy to provide that. I'll be happy to provide that. Hey, Grant, if I may just put you on the spot again, where do you see the growth in the cannabis community? Are we going to see more labs? Are we going to see more dispensaries? Are we going to see more grow? Where do you see the biggest growth, I guess, within the industry?
Well, I think you got to look at the numbers there now. I think there's 931 applications somewhere in the process in front of the CCC. 670 of them are at least provisional status or further. Of the 300 outstanding, I think most of them are cultivation and retail. What's really interesting is if you watch the Cannabis Control Commission hearings over the past 5 or 6 months in particular, it's really been astounding. With the regulatory update going on, with COVID going on, they've broken their record for approved provisional licenses in a single hearing on 2 or 3 different occasions. And so they're at a pace right now to clear out their backlog within the next 6 to 12 months. What's most interesting is there's been a notable uptick in testing labs, which is important for the entire market, obviously. Notable uptick in micro businesses, notable uptick in cultivators, notable uptick in retailers and delivery as well, I think is all the time. But the 3 big things that weren't there in the beginning that are starting to come about are smaller cultivators like micro businesses, which I think are an amazing license type because they can do their own delivery through a delivery endorsement directly to consumers. Not as much controversy as that last year when that came up last year, by the way. But yeah, and then the testing labs and the cultivators. So that's where I think the expansion's coming, and I think it's going to happen soon.
Yeah, terrific, Grant. You that just comes off the top of your head like you knew those numbers. I love that.
He does know the numbers. That's why we bring him on.
So I'm going to throw it to the numbers guy in the room. That would be David. No disrespect, James, because I'm sure you're a numbers guy too.
I like numbers.
Where is the market? When are we going to see saturation in the market?
Well, I've got a question for James. So you're fully integrated, correct?
Correct.
What do you think? How much canopy do you think the state actually needs for the adult use program?
So we actually have been looking at that. As I mentioned, we're about to open a new cultivation building, and we want to see how far that's going to take us. Grant just mentioned all the new standalone retailers that are coming online.
Yep.
I won't give you a number. I think we have a long way to go in terms of canopy. But some of the things that are happening will drive costs down, which we have to be very conscious of. Hybrid greenhouses drive costs down, and outdoor grow drives costs down.
Right.
We'll want that outdoor grow to feed our extraction lab, and others, are doing the same thing. So there is a little bit of a twist on the canopy relative to cost as well.
So I've heard numbers anywhere from 8 million to 11 million square feet for canopy.
Yeah.
You think that's right, low, high?
Yeah, I think, that's in the ballpark, because when you look at a state like Colorado, we know that's much more mature than we are, and where the population is, they have a lot of tourism, so that drove their early business. We have a lot of tourism in the Boston area, in Massachusetts, and Berkshire County, we have a lot of tourism. So those things contribute to the need for a canopy, as opposed to just looking at our citizens.
Yep.
I know you're in the Berkshires. I know it's very close to a great big state next door. That would be your Empire State, your New York. You hear the Governor, Andrew Cuomo, talking about making it a budget item in 2021.
Yes.
As someone who's on the other side of the border, are we fearful? Are we looking forward to it? How do you view what might happen in 2021 in New York?
Yeah, we have eyes on that as well, what that means for Berkshire Roots in terms of how we strategize to meet a changing environment. We know from Massachusetts experience how long it takes to actually get the first retail store established. So while they may go through the process, year and a half, it'll be a while before they're actually selling in the adult use market. So we have eyes on it. It's not an immediate thing, but it will be an impact on border dispensaries like ours.
What percentage of your business is coming from across state lines, do you think?
We don't actually reveal that,
Okay.
but it's a heavy portion. It's a big percentage.
It is a big percentage.
So I remember reading, I forget who it was, but that better than half their business was coming over the border.
Right. Well, one of his competitors, I don't know, and James, you're of the opinion that we're all in this together, right?
It's a happy community.
There you go. So I can mention Canna Provisions, right? Canna Provisions right off the exit
Right.
2.
Yep.
And you talk about easy on, easy off. I'm going out on a limb thinking that there's quite a few New York plates in that parking lot on a somewhat regular basis, especially when I was there a couple of weeks ago. I'm amazed by that, but I do think that, like everything, I think that the market is going to be big enough that everyone is going to be able to sustain their business. You agree, James?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, as I mentioned with Berkshire County, and especially the Pittsfield area where we are, it's a big tourist area. When we're back to normal events like Tanglewood events, et cetera, people have second homes there. Because of COVID, a lot of people have now bought homes there and moved from New York altogether. Mm-hmm. So it's a slightly different environment over the last, 9 months that may continue. And when events are opened again, we're going to see that tourism again.
It is so important to have tourism, not just but I will say this about the Berkshires. You don't have to get on a plane to get to the Berkshires if you're on the eastern part of the state. You really just could get on the Pike and go west. And there's still a lot of people that are discovering the Berkshires as a destination for an escape from the city, not just New York, but also Boston.
Absolutely. 2.5 hours, depending where you live in the Boston area, and you're in Pittsfield.
I've made it an hour and 50 coming from Lee, I just want to say. And knock on wood, haven't been caught yet, but that's another story. James, what would you like to do for the industry? What would you like to see evolve once this industry becomes not just a novelty, but a more mature industry?
So, we still hear a lot of people using the terminology that's been around for a long time, come in the store and ask, what's the highest THC product you have? Or I'm looking for an indica or a sativa. And we've learned, and people will continue to learn, that those aren't necessarily the primary factors in the effect. So I think I'd like to see more consumer-facing material, and especially as we learn more, that people can understand the product better and feel comfortable asking for the effect they want versus the highest THC product they can get.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, a friend of mine who does own a medical dispensary down in Bridgewater, ACS, he actually has, the focus product, the relaxing sleep product, the uplifting product, rather than the sativa and indica. It's like we all need more information. And Beth Waterfall, I'm going to drop her name, Elevate Northeast, had a great quote. She said, "There are no experts in the cannabis industry because we haven't done enough research on it yet." Accurate?
Yeah, I think there's so much more to come. I think we've all talked about for a long time, different parts of the industry, more pharma focused, where we really dial it in, more recreational focused, back to that, how do I want to feel? And then somewhere in the wellness area, somewhere in the middle of, I do understand this, I know how it makes me feel, I don't need a high level prescription. But we still want that. We still want doctors involved. We still want people understanding the combination of cannabis and other meds they're on, and the doctor needs to know that.
Right. And that is something that is being talked about more, and perhaps even inside the medical community, getting continuing education for MDs so that they can become more comfortable with the product and the medicinal elements that it has.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. All right. You got anything else, David? I'm putting him on the spot. I'm putting him on the spot. All right.
Let's go around to Grant. I may have another one, but let's see what Grant has.
Oh, there you go. We could put Grant on the spot.
You can't put Grant on the spot. He's always 100.
He'd
always on.
come up with something. I know.
Well, no,
It's Friday.
well, it's not just that. It's been such a long and arduous process with regards to these regulations in so many ways. And I think it's easy to forget when, it's easy to find a hot button issue and look at the interesting sides of it. But the regulatory update over the summer was much bigger than delivery. It included changes to medical and the amount of plants patients can have and things like that at their home grows. And I think that's really the key insight. We're at a point, we're at kind of an influx point in the progression or the rollout of adult use cannabis in Massachusetts. And the commission has even said they don't plan on doing any more regulatory updates for a while. So what we're really going to see is what I think a lot of people want, which is there's now going to be an opportunity to see what happens as more and more licenses go from provisional to final, as there's more competition. I realize there's an issue with the Oregon model where there was a substantial decrease in price, but at the same time, the national average for an ounce of top shelf marijuana is $320, and Massachusetts is closer to $340, maybe even $350 now. So I think there's room for the price to go down. The other thing is, you're all free market guys, I'm sure, Keynesian, so maybe you can explain this to me. Why should the government play a role in price controls? I don't understand from a free market perspective. I get it as a Teddy Roosevelt style trust busting bull moose adherent, because I want the government to serve in that function to break up monopolies. But why, from a free market perspective, do you feel comfortable with the government functioning as a way to control the price?
James, we're going to let you take first crack at that.
Yeah, then I'll jump in behind him.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think some years ago, we saw what happened in the Western states. For example, when they combined the medical and recreational program, they had different tiers of licensing. And with the oversupply, they'd given too many licenses for cultivation. That price dropped dramatically. So the only reason in that case that you want the government involved is because they actually didn't do a good job in the first place. So then they had to fix it. So, I hope that doesn't happen here, where we do get that pendulum swinging too far one way or the other based on the rules.
Yep.
Can you read that?
Yep, I can. But so I'll give you a couple of other thoughts on this, which is You look at the amount of capacity we have right now in the state for canopy, it's not a lot. When you can add in all the provisional licenses, we're probably close to half of the canopy we need. The issue is there's a lot of provisional licenses that just kind of sit there. And Aaron, who we have on the show regularly, made some calls to some of the micro licensees with provisionals. Out of, I think there were 22 on the list, he called the first 4 and he stopped. But the first 4, maybe it was coincidence, I don't think so. The first 4 didn't have their funding. I've dealt with some people who are talking to retailers. Retailers, you'd expect everybody who's got a retail HCA and a provisional will get the store open. There are people with retail provisional licenses that have run out of money. I was on the phone with Blake Mensing. Earlier this week, we got into a discussion. He believes about 20% of the people in the provisional pool have their capital, and the other 80% will never open. So even though you look at the canopy and you say there's a lot more canopy that's going to come online, a lot of it might not because they don't have funding. That's important. And where the state is important in this, when you look at the regulations, if you have a certain license tier, and I don't remember the exact number, Grant may, but I think it's you have to hit 70 or 80% sales of what your tier is about. Otherwise, the next year when it comes for renewal, they say we're going to lower your tier.
That's the relegation.
Right, but that's good because if you have too much product, you got 2 risks. 1, prices go way down. Good for the consumer, may not be good for the industry. Right? You still want to make sure that people are going to make money. And 2, when prices go too low or you have too much excess product, you have the Idaho problem, which is the Idaho State Police were constantly stopping people coming out of Oregon to move product illegally into other states.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
There's a
David,
balance.
I'm surprised,
That's the regulator's role.
surprised about that 80% number of potential licensees not funded.
Right.
But it's tough because, the regulations require so much work and money up front before you ever get approved. Find a location, do your community agreement, host agreement, et cetera. There's a lot that goes into it before you can even solidify your spot.
Right.
I wonder, though, does pre-certification, which is obviously in its novel stage for those unfamiliar with it, which is a new way that the delivery licenses are being handled, it's obviously not a panacea in the sense that it's not going to solve the funding problem directly, but does pre-certification, and I heard one bank in Massachusetts has now created a new department just for cannabis lending. Are those kind of things something that make you feel hopeful?
Well, the cannabis, well, go ahead, James.
Well, I was going to say, I think, the pre-certification is the biggest thing. So I can go to potential investors with my pre-certification. It's a lot easier to raise money than saying, I might get this.
Yeah, I happen to agree with that. I think it helps. You still run into the problem where you have to get through the host community agreement process, right, which means you have to go to a landlord. The landlords want money up front. Then you have to go through the process of the municipality granting you approval. Right now, that becomes more expensive, right? And I throw that one on the CDA. The CDA has lied to a lot of the municipalities. They presented a lot of misinformation. So the municipalities are now scared that if they agree to give a host community agreement to a home delivery operator, all kinds of horrible things will happen to their community, and that's going to stretch out the approval process. That means one of the things the pre-certification was designed to help out with is to compress the timeline to get to a provisional license. Now this is going to stretch it back out a bit. And
well, hold on, David.
Go ahead.
As we know, there were 2 provisional delivery provisional delivery only or courier licenses approved just a month ago.
Right.
And I was very intrigued by this, and obviously it's not going to be the norm for everyone. The time from application to pre-certification was 32 days. The time from pre-certification to getting on the schedule and getting a provisional for both of those applicants was 120 days. That, I think, is a good sign.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you on that, Grant. I think it's going to move through a lot faster because when the applicant puts in for their provisional license, there's a lot less the state has to look at. And everybody I've talked to or assisted who's going through the program has been surprised at how quickly they've gotten responses. But some of that is also, you go back a year, the Cannabis Control Commission, the application queue was upside down. There were way more applications than there were licenses. Now there's way more licenses than applications. There's probably only a couple of hundred applications sitting in the application bin that haven't gotten to provisional, and you don't know how many of those have gotten RFIs, requests for information, so that it's not really on the commission that's holding it up. I think they're doing a great job clearing the queue. I don't think they've had 6 more months to get Grant, how many licenses a month do you say they're approving? 30 to 50?
Well, at one point it was 72, but the average is probably 40 to 50, yeah.
So at 40 to 50 a month, when you have 200 in there, it's cleared within 4 months. But not all of them are going to clear right away. You got a lot that have RFIs. I think by the end of this year, they will have cleared everything that they're going to clear quickly.
James, final comments?
Yeah, I just want to go back to, the idea of getting a new license type like delivery. I happen, as you know, been involved with one of the companies trying to do that. And it was a long period of time where they were told the application's coming. So they couldn't even apply for a long time.
Yep.
Then the application was pulled back and they said, we have to redo the application. And then they decided to add a different license type. So they're still not convinced they can get through the process.
There you go. Well, that's James.
It all stretches out.
James Winokur from Berkshire Roots. I appreciate your time and taking the time on a very short. I didn't give you a lot of time to think about it, so I appreciate you coming in at the last minute, and you did a great job.
Anything for you, Jim. Anything for you.
I appreciate that, and Grant, as always, a pleasure. I always learn stuff from you, and you do a great job with the commission. Keep that up. David, your mind never ceases to amaze me. Let's just leave it at that. I do want to give a plug to one of our partners. It's the Emerald Media Group, Emerald Magazine. If you Google it, they've got a great webinar coming up on Tuesday, November 17th at 5 p.m. It's free, so just go and check out the Emerald Magazine. I think it's emeraldmagazine.com or Emerald Media. Just Google it. You'll find it. They do one of these a month, and yeah, somebody does their news at the top of their webinars, and he's an old guy, but once in a while he knows how to read.
You, Jimmy.
He knows how. It is me. He knows how to read a teleprompter. For James Winokur and Grant Smith Ellis, thank you, Dan and Isabel, everybody on the PCM team. For David Rabinovitz, I'm Jimmy Young. Thanks for watching Cannabis Chat. We'll catch you next week, and thank God it's Friday.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.